Another component of the theories of interdisciplinary studies is that they encourage contextualization. This is the practice of considering the context in which an event, a problem, a question exists. What do we mean by context? Historical context, meaning what was going on at the time that this problem existed. Geographical context, meaning how does a certain region of the world think about or deal with the problem. Intellectual context, how did people study problems? What frameworks were they using? What kind of knowledge did they have access to at the time? We could also consider the cultural, the social, the economic context in which the problem occurs. Essentially, we're not only trying to understand the problem, but we're trying to understand the situation in which that problem happens. Perspective taking is another underlying assumption behind the theories of interdisciplinary studies. Perspective taking is viewing a problem from a standpoint or a perspective other than your own. When you take on the perspective of someone else. Within interdisciplinary studies, this means analyzing a problem from at least two disciplines in an effort to find common ground and conflict. These commonalities and differences can enhance how well we understand the problem. Cognitive psychologists study perspective taking, and they've drawn a few conclusions that are useful for us here. 1, perspective taking reduces our tendency to negatively stereotype individuals and groups. When we put ourselves in others' shoes, so to speak, we are less likely to stereotype them or make generalizations that portray them in a negative manner. Why? Because we can see ourselves in their position. We connect with them, we can sympathize, we can empathize with them. 2, perspective taking enables us to identify new ideas, new strategies, new techniques, new ways of solving problems, so that we can combine our problem-solving strategies in ways that individuals who study disciplinary approaches may not be able to. 3, perspective taking makes us more aware of our biases, especially when it comes to the limitations of our life experiences and our academic training. When we attempt to view the world through different lenses, it makes us more aware of those things that we didn't see before. 4, perspective taking allows us to engage in role-playing or role-taking, where we imagine ourselves in a different role and act out how we would behave in that role. And 5, perspective taking involves holistic thinking. This is the ability to understand how ideas and information from relevant disciplines relate to each other and how they relate to the problem itself. Holistic thinking is different from perspective taking, although the two often occur together. Perspective taking is the ability to understand how each discipline would typically view the problem, whereas holistic thinking is the ability to see the whole problem in terms of its different disciplinary parts. So perspective taking, understanding the perspective itself, and then holistic thinking, combining those different perspectives into a whole. Although common ground does not appear in the definition of interdisciplinary studies, it is implicit in the concept of integration. One definition of common ground comes from Herbert H. Clark. He defines it as the knowledge, beliefs, and suppositions that each person has to establish with another person in order to interact with that person. Think of it like this. When two complete strangers meet on the street, say in New York City, what do they normally do? The strangers keep on walking by. There's no reason to stop and talk to one another. Now imagine two complete strangers who are wearing the same coat or the same sweatshirt or the same shoes or they have the same haircut. Imagine those two strangers are walking down the street in New York City. What do we think would happen? There's a chance that they may smile at one another, wave at one another, say, nice coat, as they pass one another. They may even stop and carry on a small conversation. Why? Because of common ground. Because they have something in common. Because there is a similarity between the two of them. Now that's common ground defined in social terms. Within interdisciplinary studies, common ground refers to the knowledge, beliefs, and assumptions that are shared between two disciplines, the ways in which two disciplines are similar. Psychologists and sociologists use social learning theory. The idea that we learn how to behave by watching our social environment. We learn from our parents, our siblings, our caretakers, our teachers, our coaches, and so on. But the two disciplines apply it differently. Psychologists apply the theory at the individual level to understand how an individual is impacted by those interactions, those experiences. A sociologist applies that theory at the group level to understand how entire groups of people or to understand how entire communities learn and grow.